And now, welcome to a candidate forum featuring candidates for Loomis Town Council. I'm Kathy Souza, a member of the League of Women Voters of Placer County and the moderator for today's forum. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Placer County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization of women and men established to promote political responsibility through informed, active participation in government. The League does not support, oppose, or evaluate political candidates or parties. The format to today's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will make a 2-minute opening statement. Next, the candidates will respond to questions from our audience. The questions will be reviewed by League members and will be screened for redundancy and content. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Finally, the candidates will have 1 minute to make a closing statement. If you would like to submit a question, please use the chat feature and select Submit Questions. Please address your questions to all candidates. Volunteers will be screening the questions for appropriateness and redundancy. We will pose to the candidates as many questions as time allows. Now I would like to introduce the candidates who are running for Town's Council. When I say your name, please say hello so everybody can recognize you. Jenny Nisley.
Hello.
David Ring.
Hello.
And Danny Cartwright.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome and thank you for agreeing to participate. We're now ready to begin and we'll start with opening statements. Oh, wait a minute, we have a little technical difficulty. We're unable to do a share screen.
Something happened.
Yeah. Kevin, can you make the timer co-host? Okay. There you go. Sorry about that. So we're ready to begin with opening statements. Can you see the timer okay? There you go. We'll begin with Ms. Nisley.
Okay, well, thank you to the League of Women Voters, Placer County, for hosting this. It's kind of new for me to be on this side of it, so thank you. It's been an honor to be a part of the Loomis community for the last 40 years. I guess I want to just talk about my recent projects that I've been involved with, like saving the Loomis Library and being on the library board, and also as being a part of the Seroptimus, running 2 businesses in our town, and working for the Chamber for 11 years. And I just want to let you know that I'll listen to everyone, from the youth to the seniors. And I have a few goals. I want to become a liaison for the town to the community and encourage the robust participation in the general plan update. I want to continue revitalizing the downtown corridor, but maintain our charm and our historic heritage. I want to continue the dialogue between our town and other jurisdictions regarding our traffic issues. I plan to advocate for the Loomis Library and coordinate with the education community and to offer literacy support and programs while promoting learning. And I guess my last goal would be to work with the private public on a cooperation to try to create some kind of a community center that could be used by our seniors and our youth. So jennyforloomis.org, not .com, .org, and my email is jennyforloomis@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ring.
First of all, I want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. I really appreciate how the Placer County chapter of the League has made the effort to remain nonpartisan. I think that it is especially important to keep party politics out of local elections. My name is David Ring, And I grew up in the Midwest in a place where, at least when I lived there, you couldn't drive more than 5 miles in any direction without hitting a farm. My upbringing has given me an understanding of the important role that agriculture and open space plays in a healthy community like ours. My grandfather was a pastor. My dad was a public traffic engineer, and my mom was a stay-at-home mother of 4 boys who also somehow found the time to go back to school and get her associate's degree. I thank them all for showing me the importance of family, community, education, and public service. My wife and I are both teachers. When we moved here almost 8 years ago, we picked Loomis specifically because it has the best schools in the area, and also because of the small Midwest town feeling. Both of my boys are attending Del Oro this year. I have been a regular participant at town council meetings for over 3 years. One of the things I noticed initially when attending the council meetings was that the residents who were brave enough to make public comments were rarely actually listened to. I would like to thank Mayor Clark Kretz for recognizing this problem and now acknowledging resident participation. Listening to the residents of Loomis is a high priority for me as well. Loomis residents are voicing concerns on safely opening our schools and businesses. We have concerns on housing growth, dealing with traffic, and road conditions. I want you to know that as a teacher, as a parent, and as your neighbor, I hear you. My goal is to give the members of the community a voice on the town council. I want to hear from the citizens of Loomis about how to make our community a better place. I want to take your ideas and give you a larger voice. Thank you for your vote to represent you on the town council.
Thank you. Mr. Cartwright.
I too would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event and providing a forum with, I'm drawing a blank here. I'll think of it in a second. My name is Danny Cartwright. Of course, you know I'm running for Loomis Council, and I want you to understand the reason why I'm running. And similar to the reason why I actually enlisted into the Army, I'm a history buff. I enjoy it. I'm fascinated by it. And I learned through my own self-study that America is a miracle. And I had come to the conclusion that I'd only learned how to enjoy America. I had never done anything for it. So at age 29, I enlisted into the Army and became an infantry scout sniper. That's how I spent my last 2 years in that role. That I did that so that I could assuage my guilt. I was feeling guilty for having enjoyed America, but never having done nothing for it, really. That same feeling is what prompted me to run for city council here, or town council. And that is, here I've lived in Loomis for 15 years. My family loves it. It's a small town. It's great. But I'd never done any, outside of being a model citizen, I'd never done anything for it. So when the opportunity came up this election with the 2 open seats, I thought this is my chance to actually do something directly for the city, for the town, I should say, and contribute, and not just enjoy Loomis, but do something for Loomis. I have a background in business. I'm a former Loomis business owner. I work in a law office where I've been taught to critically think through issues, and so I'm looking forward to the opportunity to work with town council as a council member for the issues that the town has in front of it, and to put my skills to use for the enrichment and the betterment of Loomis. And my website is dannyforloomis.com. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're ready to start our Q&A session. Our first question will go to Ms. Knisely, and each candidate will have an opportunity to make a 1-minute response. One of the biggest challenges for a small town is having adequate resources and revenue to provide basic services while maintaining and improving infrastructure. If Loomis is unable to generate adequate revenue to support these things, what do you propose we do?
Well, I think that we've shown we've been fiscally sound, and that our budget has shown that we can do that. But if that was the case, I think that we need to work more. I would just do what I've been doing, working with our businesses to create more business downtown, more tax dollars in, and I would also just, put us all together, and so that we can all talk and work through it. Thank you.
Mr. Ring.
Yeah, the town is actually, I don't think we've ever been in the red that I know of since since I've been attending council meetings. So we really have never had that issue. We actually have a good amount of money saved up. We've got Roger Carroll, who's our town financier. He's great. He does a great job of keeping us fiscally sound. I really don't see us even in the near future. I guess this next year we might have to cut a little corners just because of with the COVID and getting less money coming in through that. But once we get Costco in, we really won't have any problems. There's not a lot of corners to cut in Loomis as it is because we've been running such a really tight ship this whole time.
Mr. Cartwright.
So that is correct. Loomis has been running a lean budget for years, and that's to their credit. That's a credit to the leadership. However, when you look at the ever-increasing expense of maintenance, it outpaces the revenues coming in. So there's a slow divide growing year over year. That's why you'll see various roads that are not being maintained. They're on the capital improvement plan, they're graded as F, and yet we don't have the money specifically for either that maintenance district or for that purpose to fix a road, for example. And that's a basic service that people expect. So what I would encourage is fiscal responsibility with the new revenues coming in from Costco, which are projected to be 1.2 to 1.5 million per year, but then also encourage other businesses from outside of Loomis to relocate in Loomis to occupy our vacant commercial spaces.
For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Ring. In 2018, one of the most controversial residential housing developments in Loomis's history was the passage of the Village at Loomis Development. After a referendum, the development was given a one-year moratorium that expired just recently in June 2020. What was your stance on this development and why?
So I was against the Villages. Just real quick, for me personally, it was too much growth and too fast. And the developer I felt was really not being honest with the town. But what really turned the tide for me was 2018 was when I last ran for town council. And I went and knocked on hundreds of doors, just introducing myself to the town because nobody really knew me back then. And, not everybody wanted to talk about the Villages, but those who did, there was not a single person who was for it. And I even came to the town council and I told them, I said, you don't have the town behind you on this. And they still went ahead and passed it. And it took, $50,000 of a referendum for the town to actually have its say. This is just another example of when the town council wasn't listening to its residents. And so I really want to change that if I get on the town council.
Mr. Cartwright.
Yes, so the Villages is a hot topic. I understand it's an old project, it's been on the books with the former developers since 1998. So we're looking at 21 years of going back and forth and adjusting it. The final iteration of it was, just as Mr. Ring said, it was voted against because of the referendum. So the town council saw value in the project. It was voted in favor by 4 members and 1 member voting against. And even that 1 member may have had some positives to say about it, but just not enough to warrant a positive vote. I wasn't privy to all that information. So this is not a cop-out. It's just that it's a complicated situation and I don't have all the information. But I can tell you from an aesthetic. Now, I'm qualifying this as an aesthetic, looking at the row of garages that look like a storage facility didn't appear to fit with the town in my eyes, but that's based upon an aesthetic and not on any other thing.
Ms. Nisley.
Okay, well, I go on the record of saying that I was for that for C&D, that village project. But I was mostly talking about the housing being next to the freeway and the importance of that being part of our general plan. That project is no more. So, and if another project comes forward, I am for protecting our small town culture, and it's important to me. I grew up here. So I do believe we need a variety of different options, and I think this is the time that we need to just sit down and talk about it in our general plan, and I think we need community input on this as top priority. But again, the property, the more dense near the freeway is what will help our downtown businesses. And then as it spreads out, it should be bigger properties.
For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Cartwright. What changes to the town master plan would you like to see occur during the Loomis general plan update? For example, zoning changes, changes to traffic circulation, etc. Please try to be specific.
So the traffic circulation plan, the town has already spent thousands and thousands of dollars on that study. Whether you can implement that plan is a money matter. So we need to cure the money matter first before you can even address that issue. As far as rezoning to the general plan, I'm open to any ideas as long as they make sense. So when I'll give you an example. When a proposal comes before me, I'm going to have a top-down approach to it. The first is have an open mind. Don't prejudge, don't be prejudiced. 2, does it align with the general plan? 3, does it comply with all the relevant laws? And then 4, does it contain sufficient merit to warrant any follow-on action? Now that follow-on action may be a relook at rezoning in a general plan, but it has to contain the merit to warrant that. If not, you're wasting your time.
Ms. Nisley? You need to unmute yourself. I'm sorry.
I'm trying. Sorry. Okay. I think this is the perfect time to talk about all the rezoning. And I think what I would like to see rezoning of our parking ordinances. I'd like our parking ordinances to be relooked at for downtown, as I think that has restricted some of our businesses coming in the past. There are some properties that are landlocked, that are commercial industrial, that might be able to be fit somewhere else, but maybe not. It's the time we all need to sit down and be participating in that general plan so that we can look at what we need to do now. That was our plan. That plan was done 20 years ago, and it hasn't been updated, and it should be reviewed every 5 years. And I think that's a very important thing that I would like to see, that we calendar that and we talk about it so it's not coming up new, and we make the changes that we need for what works for us right now. So thank you.
Mr. Ring?
Yeah, the general plan, the biggest thing that needs to change with the general plan right now is that we need to make sure that it is in line with the ordinances that exist. Right now there's a mismatch between the two, and anybody who comes in and wants to develop or do anything really, they really they have 2 sets of rules that they're trying to play by, and they don't know which ones to go with. And so we really need to make sure, I think that's priority number 1 is to get general plan and our ordinances all aligned with one another. Jenny did talk about that industrial plot that's landlocked. We could look at rezoning that. I think that's probably the first thing that we should look at. But again, the most important thing, besides redoing the general plan so that it aligns with the ordinances, is that we get community input on this. If you're interested in this at all, then you need to go and apply to be on a committee. You can go to the town's website and get on one of those committees, because we really need the town's input for all of this.
Okay, for our next question, we'll begin with Ms. Nisley. As an individual and not part of a group organization, how many times in the last 3 years have you attended local Loomis town government meetings and made statements or asked questions? What workshops or local events have you attended? And what were some of the topics you were concerned with?
Well, that's kind of not a real fair question, because I pretty much attended almost every single meeting. You could probably count one that I might have missed, because that was part of my job with the Loomis chamber. But I personally have been up there talking and making statements, just me as myself living in Loomis. I would say at least 10 times. I don't know what I can't think of them off the top of my head, but you could probably go through all the minutes and find them. So thank you.
Mr. Ring?
Yeah, that is a weird one for Jenny, because she does go to all of them. But I know, because I go to all of them too. And so I've been to, in the last 3 years, I don't think I've missed more than 2. And so I hit them all. I go to the planning commission meetings, the town talks we bring in, we did that up until COVID hit. We did that at the library, and those are great. The issues, the villages was a big one. We talked about tax increases. We talked about Pioneer. We talked about vaping for a while. That one was a hot button issue. But I think the big one right now, and that's going to occupy the town council for at least the next year or so, is the general plan update. And so we really need to focus on that one. Yeah.
Mr. Cartwright.
So within the last 3 years, I'm going to need some help on this. The last meetings that I attended were pertaining to saving the Loomis Library. So I'm not sure if that fits within your 3-year window, but those are the last meetings that I attended. And since then, I have taken on night school courses, and of course, I have a day job and a family. So if elected, it's not that I don't have time. I can rearrange my schedule to attend meetings, and that's not going to be a problem. I just cut back on my school, and that's all. And by cutting back on school, I make time for the future meetings. But to answer your question directly, in the past 3 years, if the Loomis Library, saving the Loomis Library fits within that time frame, then those are the meetings I attended.
Okay, for our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Ring. Campaign finance reform is an important topic everywhere in this country, but especially in small towns like Loomis, where a few $1,000s can decide whose message can reach the voters. What are your thoughts on allowing donations and amounts from developers, corporations, political action committees, outside town interests, and individuals?
In terms of developers and corporations, they're mostly in it. They're almost entirely in it because of money. And so they would only invest in a candidate if they thought they were going to get a return on that. And so I haven't taken anything from them. I think you said PACs. Those I am entirely against because they are very easy to hide money, or you have no idea who's actually giving it to you. Can't remember what the other one was, but outside interests. And so with people who live outside of Loomis, if they're too far outside, I don't agree with it. But if they're real close, then I guess it's fine. I do want to say, though, that I had planned on running my campaign as a self-funded campaign, and I have had a lot of people. Every time anybody donates to my campaign, is so much appreciation for me. I really want to say that I am so thankful to all of you for donating.
Mr. Cartwright.
So when I filed my paperwork for the election, I chose to have a cap of $2,000. That's the maximum that I would raise in donations. And by doing so, it simplifies your campaign as far as reporting requirements, but then it also, and more importantly to me, is that it can't be said that you were bought. So all of my campaign donations are $99 or less, and I haven't even come close to near my $2,000 cap. So, but to your question about political action committees, outside interests, and so forth, I am a lover of the First Amendment, and so I interpret that when people donate as that is them exercising their First Amendment, but it's with a financial donation as opposed to, let's say, a verbal statement. So there are election laws. You need to abide by all the election laws, and there are limits within, but I'm not into capping someone's First Amendment.
Ms. Nisley.
Okay, that's interesting. I had this conversation today kind of on Facebook. I haven't accepted any donations from any PACs or any developers. I am going over the $2,000 mark, so I have filed that correct paperwork, or my treasurer has, and that I have some in kind where my campaign headquarters were, and I had some in kind with my my logos and my thing like that. So, and when we started, we didn't know how many people were going to run. It looked like there might have been 5 or 6, and now there's just the 3 of us. But all of mine have been local and people that have supported me and are from our community. So I don't believe in taking PAC money.
For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Cartwright. How can we balance growth with environmental protections?
That's actually not as hard as it may seem. What you look at is you only have so much land here in Loomis. We are fixed by our town boundaries. So the question is, what do you do with the land that you do have? And then how is that land zoned? When you look at a construction project, let's say for a new project in town, of course there's going to be environmental reports done. There's going to be traffic studies done, ingress, egress, all of that. So you're going to balance that with what are you gaining to what are you losing? And if you are losing more than you're gaining, then of course it's a no-brainer. It's not something worth pursuing. Now, you're confined by the existing laws about what you can do from an environmental standpoint, from waterways to runoff and drainage and things of that sort. So you just obey the contractors just obey the existing laws that we have. And of course, with community input, then everything comes together and we should be happy as far as the end result.
Ms. Nisley.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. How can we balance growth with environmental protections?
Again, we have this general plan that we have, and that we're having this update. So this is the time to look at all of those things. And then we definitely have to pay attention to our environmental, but we also have to look at our economic our economic part of being downtown and what we need. So it is just a balance that we all need to talk about. Thank you.
Mr. Ring?
So I think just following the laws is all that we can require them to do, require the developers to do. And so if that's all we're bounded by, then we need to make sure that the laws, or at least our general plan, at least for the case of Loomis, our general plan encompasses the fact that we want environmental considerations to be taken into account. And so if we don't put that in our general plan, then we can't really force them to protect the environment the way that we might want them to. What I think we can do, though, is we can keep our zoning down more in the central location. So our density will be closer to downtown, and we can keep our outer areas more open, and so that we get the open space, the environmental surroundings it for us all can stay more rural, more agricultural, and so that we can all hopefully enjoy them all together.
For our next question, we'll begin with Ms. Nisley. The town of Loomis estimates the cost to repair its deteriorated roads and aged infrastructure to be over $7 million. The town circulation element plan, which will alleviate traffic in the downtown, is estimated to cost well over $15 million. What strategy would you use to pay for these needed improvements?
I do believe that we just need to keep looking for different sources. We need to be looking for grants. We need to be working with our, other jurisdictions and Caltrans and all of the different entities that could help. And it's like I say, we're just going to have to look at different funding sources. So, thank you.
Mr. Ring.
Yeah, we had Britt Snipes, who was our previous, I don't know if he is gone yet, but I don't know if he's retired yet, but he was our previous town engineer, and he did a great job of finding outside sources. But I think in order to fund them, I mean, we pretty much have to do what we've been doing, which is we make a list of what we can afford, and then we just go down the list as we have the money. Luckily, with Costco coming in, we should be able to start tackling some of those projects. I think the needed thing that we need from Costco, though, is our road maintenance. We could really use a lot of that for the rest of the town and not just the downtown corridors.
Mr. Cartwright.
So I agree that the newfound revenues coming in from Costco are going to be a good shot in the arm, but they're not the cure-all. So I would not recommend on leaning on Costco as your only crutch. You need to put out the effort, or the council needs to put out the effort into seeking other sources of revenue. Now, the main source of revenue is going to be coming from sales tax as opposed to property tax. I mean, you do get property tax, but within that 1% top property tax, there's also allocations within that are already going to certain functions. So if you look at the sales tax, you're getting a pure 1% off of that. We need to develop more sales tax. to augment what we're getting from Costco so that we can start funding these projects. And if you look at the capital improvement plan, you look at the roads, they're graded from A to F. Start with the Fs and do the ones that you can fully fund. Get that project behind you, and then like a checklist, you go to the next one. But it's a money issue, and we need to focus on increasing our sales tax revenues by promoting businesses.
For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Ring. Regarding the general plan update, what are your ideas or issues that you would like to see changed, added, or rectified, and why?
So I feel like I answered this one already, but like the most important thing is to bring our general plan in line with our town ordinances. That really needs to happen first, because it's just not safe really for us as a town to have them not in line with one another. Those are our rules, and if our rules are all over the place, then you can wind your way through as a developer and just do whatever you want. Not whatever you want, but close. So I think that is the number one issue that we need to have. But beyond that, we need community participation with this. It has to happen. You have to get, if you have any interest at all, you have to apply to be on these committees and participate in this process.
Mr. Cartwright.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. I can find it again. Regarding the general plan update, what are your ideas or issues you would like to see changed, added, or rectified, and why?
So I agree that getting the community involvement is key, because if you look at Measure C and D, the referendum, that was community involvement. What you want to do is get the community involvement ahead of time so that you don't have referendums in the future, so that everyone's happy with the decisions that are being made. And with the general plan, when you're looking at zoning out the zoning of certain lands and what can be set aside for certain purposes, of course, the people who live here, they're the ones that matter the most as far as their opinions. So I would encourage people to get involved with the Planning Commission to whatever level you can as far as time allows, so that you're at least more educated, and you can then, with that information, provide good suggestions for the leadership to use when we are, because like I say, we are now in the process of revitalizing our general plan. And I do agree with Jenny that it should be looked at not every 20 years, but probably every 5 or something along those lines.
Ms. Nisley.
Okay. I feel like I've answered this too, but I'm going to just go back to I just getting us all together, and community input is like top priority. I am not going in with any kind of major plan to change anything at this point. I think it's been a pretty good plan. I think we need to educate everybody what the plan is, and if it isn't fitting the needs of the housing needs that we need now, because things are changing, then we need to talk about it. But again, I just want everybody to participate. We can't ask more, because we can't have this division of our town. We have these wonderful people, and everybody's very passionate. And we just need to come together on this and get this general plan updated. And the differences with the ordinance and the general plan does need to be corrected. Thank you.
Okay, for our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Cartwright. Do you support a sphere of influence for Loomis?
Is there any definition to what you mean by sphere of influence?
I don't want to give you my definition, so I am going to actually look up what the definition is.
I have an idea, but I didn't know what context the asker of the question was referring to.
And I don't have any more than that. It is a spatial region or concept division over which a state or organization has a level of cultural, economic, military, or political exclusivity.
So that's my general understanding also. Now, what was the question again? One more time, please.
Do you support a sphere of influence for Loomis?
Well, the way I'm interpreting that question is when you look at our neighboring communities, Rockland, Roseville, Auburn, especially when our roads are interconnected, and that's an issue that we share, then of course I encourage a sphere of influence, because we don't want to have a them versus us relationship. Because when it comes to projects that will overlap both areas, you need to work with your counterparts in those other adjoining governments. So if by sphere of influence, it means to reach out a hand and initiate a conversation to get some ideas on how to work together more cooperatively instead of butting heads, the way I understand that Rockland and Loomis have in the past, then I'm all for expanding our sphere of influence and doing it in an ambassadorial way.
Ms. Nisley.
Yeah, if that is if the way that Danny, I'm sorry, explained that the question is being asked by the person in the community, I definitely would support the sphere of influence working together and talking with our neighboring jurisdictions. We have to do that for these projects, especially the traffic projects. If it was more meant for our out of our boundaries of our community members having a say, I definitely think they also have some say in they come into our town and use our town. So I would be listening and bringing that back to our discussions too. Thank you.
Mr. Ring.
So generally a sphere of influence, especially, it's more of a technical term, so I don't know if that's how they mean it, but in a technical sense, it's usually the areas right around outside your town where you are willing and able to financially provide services for. And so you'd have to provide the infrastructure for it. You'd have to be able to use their police or fire or water or anything like that. And so in that sense, then your sphere of influence is very touchy, especially in Loomis, because we don't have a lot of money right now to provide especially our road upkeep just for our town. And so it's very difficult for us to have a sphere of influence with the finances that we have. It will increase more as we gain more revenue. So if we have more business moving, when Costco comes in, when we get all extra money into our town, we then will be able to provide a greater sphere of influence, and maybe an annex, if they are interested, the areas outside of town who really want to say, who struggle because they don't get to vote in our elections.
Okay, for our next question, we'll begin with Ms. Nisley. How can we protect our citizens from gun violence?
That's an interesting question. I guess I'm not quite understanding. I think that we just need, I believe in supporting our law enforcement. I believe in, well, that's a hard question for me. I'm sorry. I just believe in supporting our law enforcement. Thank you.
Mr. Ring?
I'm not sure if we have an issue with that in town. I really haven't. I mean, in all of the times that I've been at any council meetings, I've never had any of those issues come up in town at the council meeting. But I mean, I'm trying to think of what would be, is it just how do we protect our citizens from gun violence?
Yes,
that's more of a broad category, and so it's something that we need to address. We can address at the state level, at the national level, but at the local level, we really can't do a whole lot other than, fend for yourself, or possibly, increase our sheriff's, the amount of patrol areas that we have. And so there really isn't a lot that the town council itself can do in this case.
Mr. Cartwright?
So protecting yourself is your responsibility. It's not the law enforcement's responsibility. Of course, their motto is to serve and protect, but if, for instance, in your opinion, if they did not serve and protect you adequately, you could not sue them for not doing a good job or or failing to do their job. So that tells you right there that it's your responsibility to protect yourself. Now, if law enforcement does happen to step in a beneficial way, then that's all the better. But if you're looking for an issue or a solution to an issue that's at the personal level, you got to start with yourself. And so, educate yourself on the Second Amendment. And if you choose to exercise your Second Amendment, do so at least with the proficiency of having taken some training.
For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Ring. Would you support changes in the zoning to allow lots smaller than the existing 5,000 square foot requirements?
Depends on the area. I would probably say it depends. On the outskirts, definitely not. I think that where our larger rural spaces need to stay large and rural. In the downtown area, I have never actually seen what a 5,000 square lot, I can't picture that in my head, square foot lot is. And so if it's in the general plan right now, then I would say no, but that's a conversation that the town has to have. And we should do that during the general plan update. But I don't see why not. But then again, I don't. It depends on the size and how it fits in with the region where we're putting it.
Mr. Cartwright.
So I have my trusty calculator here. I did the square root of 5,000 to come up with roughly 70 by 70. So that gives you an idea of the lot size that you're looking at, or some configuration thereof. So when you look at is it appropriate? Well, it would be more appropriate in the downtown area than it would be on the outskirts. So I agree with Mr. Ring on that. You also have to look at, okay, then how much distance do you have in between those lots? Between the structures on the lots, because you have fire access to think about, open space, trees. So you need to have a plan in front of you with some details rather than a figure of 5,000 square feet, because 5,000 square feet could be configured a bunch of different ways. Some could be pretty horrible. Some might not be so bad, but you need to have the details in front of you. And there's just simply not enough details in that question to give really an honest opinion.
Ms. Nisley?
Yeah, I would say you'd have to see the project, and again, I would support if it fits right, it makes sense. If it's downtown near the freeway, then that type of housing can help support our workforce that might work in our downtowns and our businesses. So yes, if it makes sense, but it's pretty hard to say that in general because you don't know what the project is. Again, denser in the downtown and wider as you go out.
For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Cartwright. What does Loomis mean to you, and what will you do to keep that ideal a reality?
What Loomis means to me is a safe place for my family, a comfortable place for my family where we have the room. I'm fortunate that I live on 5 acres. So this is a dream of mine that I've had since I was on my own as an adult. I grew up on a horse ranch, so we had, 40 to 50 acres. So not that I have 40 to 50 acres now, but believe me, 5 is better than none. And I enjoy it. So Loomis to me is a little bit of Mayberry. If you remember the Andy Griffith show, where you have the old downtown section. Of course, there's a modern neighborhood in Sunrise, Loomis Sunrise, which is virtually indistinguishable from any neighborhood in Roseville or Rockland. But again, I am blessed to be where I'm at on the what's zoned as a residential estate, being 5 acres. So to me, that's Loomis, is having space, having peace and quiet, aside from the railroad tracks, but I'm okay with that, and having the ability to raise my family in such a nice place. Thank you.
Ms. Nisley?
Okay, well, I think Loomis, to me, is community pride, and they, again, like he was talking about Mayberry, I hear that all the time, a small town. I've worked with the Historical Society to keep that small town feel. I worked on the Loomis Legacy Loop and different things to work on that. But I also think that we need to keep our conversations open with our all of our fire, our police, and our education. The COVID right now is really affecting our education system, and we need to have those conversations. So I would say the conversations, keeping them open with all of our community members, because it's the people that make it great. And also I'd encourage people to volunteer. I think that's what makes Loomis great. Thank you.
Mr. Ring?
Yeah, Loomis to me is it's just like our motto: a small town's is a big family, and so it's very family oriented. I love raising my kids here. but like most families, you disagree with someone. You have people you don't get along with. And I think that is something that we really need to work on in our town, especially since the village has happened. There's still people I know of who don't talk to each other because of that. And so yes, you have an argument with your uncle or your cousins, but then you come back, you know that it's important for you to be together. And so I think that we need to try to work with everybody in town to solve everybody's problems. And so if you come to me on the council and you're from the right or the left, I don't care. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to treat you like you're my neighbor because you already are, and I'm going to respect you for that. And so I think that kind of approach to town council is very important.
I think we have time for one last question, and we'll begin with Ms. Nisley. If you received a $1 million grant to use for the city any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
Well, I would try to buy some of the property around the library, and I would put a community center there because I believe that is something that's super important. I think we need to have a bigger presence for our seniors, a senior center, and I think we need to have some for our youth. So if I could do that, I would buy some open space and maybe even a park, but I would definitely do that. Then I would put the rest of it in to fixing our infrastructure and our drainage ditches, because apparently we have a big problem with those too. Thank you.
Mr. Ring.
Yeah, is it only $1 million?
Only $1 million.
I think parks would be good. It's hard especially with land prices in Loomis. It's hard to buy parks that size, but it would be great to put some towards parks. You really can't do a lot of road maintenance with that. At this point in time, I think that we could follow what we did, what the town council just did recently with the CARES Act money, and they made it available to the businesses in town. And so I think that was a really good choice by the town council in that case. It would probably not be a bad idea, and you probably think I'm pandering, but it would not be a bad idea to actually give some of this money just straight to the community and say, look, here's $1,000 to everybody in town, and go with it if you will. I mean, that's not a lot of, it's only $60,000 of it. So we could give everybody $10,000 and be okay with it. So I think that would be actually a good idea, because we really need to support our local businesses, our local community, and give them the money, the choice, the freedom of choice to do what they want with it. Mr.
Cartwright.
Well, in the big picture, $1 million is not really a lot of money. There's a bathroom proposal at Sunrise Park, and it's a 10 by 12 bathroom, 2 stalls, and it's costing $350,000 per the last quote. So when you think about $350,000 for a bathroom, $1 million doesn't seem like you could do a whole lot with it. But to answer your question directly, what I would do with that $1 million is I would look at what is the worst road in Loomis and see if, with the funds that we already have, if that $1 million can go with it to actually redo the road. So for instance, Boynton Road, which right off of King Road, Loomis is responsible for about the first 200 yards of that up the Chisholm Trail, and that's got to be redone. It's cold patch over cold patch on top of a deteriorating substrate. If, for instance, that would take $500,000 to redo, then of course that's a done deal. And then look at the next worst road to see what we can do with the remaining, let's say, $500,000 based on that figure. So I'm about the roads. Thank you.
And now we're ready for our closing statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute. We'll begin with Ms. Nisley.
Me again, huh? Okay, I think that there's a lot going on with our town, but we have 3 main things. We have our community, we have our town, and we have our businesses, and they all need each other. Our community needs our business needs our community, our town needs our business, and I think that I can bring those connections together, because that's what I've been doing. And I just want your vote on November 3rd so that I can keep honoring the past and embracing the future. So jenniferloomis.org or jenniferloomis@gmail.com if you have more questions. Thank you.
Mr. Ring.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters, and also to all of you watching this in Loomis. I want to thank my wife and kids for their patience and continued support as I run for town council. As a society, I think that we are becoming more and more divided. Neither of us has all of the answers, but all of us think we do. So we have become more rooted in our own opinions. And the more time we spend fighting amongst ourselves, the less time we spend trying to find solutions to our problems. I believe the frustration begins when people don't believe they're being heard. If elected, I promise to hear you. I promise to bring an unbiased, nonpartisan, neighborly approach to the town council. I want a government that listens to its citizens and works for the people to help solve all of our problems. This November, you need to be sure to elect someone that you can trust to be looking out for the best interests of the town of Loomis and its community. Someone who hasn't forgotten what it's like to be a good neighbor. Someone that will listen to your voice and amplify it. Please vote for David Ring for your town council and let me amplify your voice.
Mr. Cartwright.
Well, I'm excited about just the possibility of being elected. With my background in business and my education in finance, I'm looking forward to bringing that to the town council so that there could be a different view, maybe perhaps to some of the challenging issues, the money issues of the town. And I'm interested in learning about more of the opportunities from the state and county level as far as securing funds to help our businesses. You know, one thing I'd like to do is look at what kind of grants the best money in the world so you don't have to pay it back, what kind of grants we can get to help encourage businesses to relocate in our downtown corridor, or maybe if there's an empty space on Swetzer in our industrial area, but to help the town generate more revenue so that these ongoing problems of deferred maintenance become a thing of the past. So I encourage you to go to my website, dannyforloomis.com, learn a little bit more about me, or if you have a question, you can just email me at dannyforloomis@gmail.com. Thank you.
Well, that concludes our forum. I would like to thank all the candidates for participating. You all did a great job. I would also like to thank all the volunteers who helped make this possible. We hope you found this forum helpful. If you haven't received them already, you will receive your voter information in the ballot in the mail soon. Please read the information carefully. Due to COVID-19, there are a lot of changes to our election process this year. If you are voting by mail, please mail your ballot early. If you are voting in person, please note that our traditional voting places are being replaced with voter service centers that will be located throughout the county. There will be opportunities for early voting. There will also be several drop-box locations available in various locations. For information on how to vote, when to vote, and where to vote, please visit placerelections.com. That's placerelections.com. Thank you for participating tonight. Be sure to vote.